the pond are getting ever wider. And with us this morning is Joel Sears to talk about that. He is the president of the York County Taxpayers Council. He's a member of the York Suburban School Board. He's a very concerned citizen, and he's run for public office before, and he's a good friend. And he joins us here on WSBA. Good morning, Joel. How are you?
Doing well, Gary. How are you? And welcome back.
Well, thank you. It's good to be back, and good to have you back on. So take us through where your mind is right now in this last week. A lot of things have happened in the week we were away, so kind of trying to catch up a bit.
Well, one of the things that's happened, I guess, in the last month or so is that people are hanging on at the county level by the red, green, yellow designations to determine just exactly how loosened conditions are going to be in their counties. So every Friday, the governor's been making announcements. Last Friday, a couple more, I guess several more, in fact, were designated. 9 counties were designated to go yellow again, including Adams and Franklin. I started looking at these data-driven criteria and wondering if this is a data-driven decision or a data-driven suggestion.
Right.
It seemed to be fairly tight at the beginning. About a month ago when this yellow designation began to appear, it looked like the numbers, the incidence rate of 50 new cases per 100,000 over the last 2 weeks was a fairly objective criterion that was really used to determine the transition. Lately, it seems like it's political pressure that's determining the transition. I'll give you a couple examples. Dawson County, right in the heart of central Pennsylvania, currently is running about 314 cases. That's as of yesterday. 314 cases in the past 2 weeks. Their target would be 137. That's more than double. So how that was selected as one to go yellow is certainly has nothing to do with the incidence rate. There are others that are similar. Franklin, for example, to our west, 153 cases with a target of 77. The same thing is happening to the ones that are going yellow on the 5th, which is this coming Friday. Some of the worst, as you can imagine, are in the southeast. Philadelphia, for example, target 788. The current incidence rate, Gary, is almost 2,300.
Wow.
It's so far off the benchmark, you have to wonder what in the world the benchmark really means. And that's the sort of thing that leads me to question some of the expert and scientific advice that we've been receiving all along. We need to be able to trust the numbers.
One of the things that jumped out at me here, Joel, that I just wanted to kind of insert, June 5th, coming up this Friday, we have a number of the counties going green in the state of Pennsylvania. And one of those was Allegheny County. And I'm thinking to myself, Allegheny County, that's out in the Pittsburgh area. How is that going green, but York County, for example, is not going green? I mean, that was one of the things that kind of jumped out at me. If we're going by the numbers and we're going by this data-driven kind of decisions that you're talking about.
Well, I think in that case it's pressure, Gary. They are well under the criterion, and they have been for some time. I think they had a legitimate beef when the first round of yellow designations were made.
Right.
And the problem, again, is one of being able to trust the number. First of all, the number's objective, supposedly. It's case count. Well, as we begin to do more and more testing, what do you think happens to positive case count?
It's going to go up.
It goes up. It doesn't mean that there's a higher percentage of the population that's infected, but if you no longer have to show symptoms to get a test, then it would seem to me that this absolute number of positives has to go up. And we've actually seen that in York County. We're on the rise again. I track this stuff every day. York County's on the rise again. We bottomed out at about, and I think some people use the 50, but we were down in the 137 range with a target of 220 back on the 23rd. We're back up now to 156.
Yeah. And we were down in 34 per 100,000 at one point in time 2 weeks ago. Before that was 42.
Yeah, now it's creeping back up.
Yeah.
So what happens if we go up above the threshold again? And that's happened in several counties.
Well,
They've been designated yellow, and now they're, by that criterion, they're red again.
It's interesting, and I don't mean to throw a grenade into your oatmeal room here, but I'll do it, where I saw the governor say the other day, we have to get back to school in the fall. You're also a school director. And
Correct.
And when he said that, he said, we can't go back to red again. And I think he was right. I don't think people are willing to go back, knowing what we know now, I don't think people are willing to go back to red again. Unless there be some kind of just bubonic plague kind of proportions on this, I don't think people are willing to do that. What's your sense on that?
So either, Gary.
Yeah.
And we made that statement. It was pretty clear that he was focused on reopening for in-person classes in the fall. To quote him, we are going to be opening schools, whether it's in August or September. Schools may look different.
Mm-hmm.
But when asked if schools were open for in-person, asked if they're going to be open for in-person, no question.
Yeah.
We are doing everything. I love these statements. We are doing everything to make sure schools open in the fall. Well, who's we?
Yeah, exactly.
We as local school boards who now are faced with things that are absolutely physically impossible to pull off under the guidelines.
For example?
We cannot have 25 or 30 kids in a classroom. That simply won't support the guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
We can't put 70 kids on a school bus. It will not support the guidelines. We can't put 300 kids in a cafeteria and conform to the guidelines.
And so now, add to that the costs of running double bus routes or however you're going to do this. I mean, I have no idea. All the extra buses, the extra trips. Right. Think about the extra space, the extra buses, the extra trips, right. All those kind of things. I mean, that's what people don't understand. And you're strangely enough, we still use budgets here for local school districts that you've got to kind of conform to, right?
Well, and as you say, budget, we did find out that the interim 5-month budget made a promise of flat funding for school funding. That means that the basic and the special education allocations, are going to be the same as the current year that's just about to end. Well, for the last 5 or 6 years under this so-called fair funding formula, districts around the state have been getting increases. The totals have been between $100 and $200 million a year. In our case, a small school district, that was $200,000 to $300,000. That's not a bad chunk of change. Well, that's not coming this year in the face of all of these additional financial pressures. Here's another thing to think about. What guarantees that teachers or students are even going to be willing to come back?
Yeah. And one
national poll shows that 1 in 5 teachers are unwilling to return to classes in the fall.
There's something else, too, that I noticed, and I talked to a bunch of teachers last week about a lot of kids, and this is another thing, I'm just throwing this on you this morning, who have not gotten into the online classes. And a lot of incompletes out there and failure notices and so forth for kids who have not locked into doing their work. Joel Sears, president of the York County Taxpayers Council. Joel, all kinds of questions. I mean, I was talking to some people this week who were teachers, and they said, we've got a lot of kids that didn't come online to do the rest of their schooling this year. And so, we're faced with the idea of having to have incompletes and failure markings. And, of course, in a year where we have a lot of loose ends out there, that certainly is a problem, right?
It's a terrible problem, Gary. School districts were caught with their pants down. You know that.
Right.
As a classroom teacher yourself, can you imagine going through a transition in, say, less than a week or two to go 100% online?
Right.
If you'd never done it before.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's challenge number one. Second, the kids are in an environment that's really strange to them. It might seem exciting at first, and I think a lot of us have this notion that kids are experts at technology. Well, they really aren't. They're really good at the things that are unstructured, but they're not all that good at things that require them to sit down and go through a protocol. And these online learning sessions require that kind of discipline. It's not free-range technology.
Right.
So we're having a lot of problems, as you say, with kids even being in online at the right time. And the impact on grades, well, I know in our school district and in many other school districts, what is now the end of the school year closes out the 4th marking period. And in many cases, there's no grade. Mm-hmm. In other cases, the grade is a pass-fail. In some school districts, the grades are carried forward from the 3rd marking period. So we have this mishmash that leaves us nothing objective and nothing uniform across the Commonwealth to determine how well our kids have done.
Right.
In addition, the standard tests have been suspended.
Yep.
So we really went into a kind of a twilight zone, an educational twilight zone where nobody knew what was going on, if we look at it from a state perspective. Philadelphia was left without 50,000 computers when they flipped the switch. 200,000 kids, a quarter of whom had no access to computers. You cannot possibly educate kids in a cyber environment unless they have computers.
So you're looking at a group here that down the line might be called the lost generation, at least for a year, on education. Is that a fair statement?
You really have to think seriously about repeating the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would think that, at least that. Yeah.
We have, as you're also talking about the revenue impact. Pennsylvania has the dubious distinction of being the state that is projecting the biggest losses in municipal revenue.
Wow.
Bar none. 40%. Now, we're talking about villages, townships, counties, cities, that revenue, not the school districts and not the state. 40%, Gary.
Well, I'm looking at...
You can't possibly operate even the bare bones public safety operations in your district, or let's say in your jurisdiction, with a 40% revenue loss.
I'm looking at also, I was driving up and down streets the other day, just for the heck of it, and I don't know how many for sale signs I saw. Small businesses have been closed, beauty salons, places like that, different places that may not open again, or if they do open, it's going to be tough. And so now every time you look at one of those, you say, okay, there's lost revenue to that district as well, right?
Forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Forever. And we look at the way revenues are raised at the county level. We're so dependent upon property tax that you might think, well, that's not going to be such a big deal. Property taxes and fees are still going to come in. Well, no, they're not. They may be owed and payable, but if you don't have the money to pay it, you will not pay.
Exactly.
You'll delay as long as possible.
Yep.
Flip your attention to the jurisdictions like the state that's funded by other sorts of taxes. There's no property tax at the state level.
Mm-hmm.
Income, sales tax, all dependent upon economic activity. And if economic activity is down by 30 or 40%, what happens to the taxes at the state level?
Exactly.
So if municipalities are thinking that the state will bail them out, think again.
Well, you think about ripples in the pond here, the name of our segment, and they have gotten so wide and far-reaching now as we continue to see the aftermath. Did we? Let me ask you this question, and again, I didn't mean to take you off script this morning a little bit, but did we unnecessarily trash our economy here in the state of Pennsylvania? I forget the rest of the country. Let's just talk about our state, our locale. Did we unnecessarily trash it? I mean, we're looking at Reopen York and round the clock down, all these different places and all the different controversies. But did we trash our economy needlessly here? About a minute and a half left, Joel.
The short answer is yes, Gary. And in a sense, it's understandable. We applied the New York City standard to good old York, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
I'll use that as kind of an exaggeration.
All right.
If we were looking at things in this data-driven, scientific fashion, after a week or two, we could have seen and did see that the incidence in the large cities, the large metropolitan areas, is really where we should have been focusing our attention. So before closing everything down, we might have taken just a day or two to see where the problems really were and done what was necessary to deal with those specific problems. That doesn't undermine or underplay the importance of COVID in the hinterland, so to speak. But the incidence rates around the state in general, if you look at the map, look at the red, yellow, green map, you'll see that the concentration is in a half a dozen counties. The Southeast is still a hot spot. That's where the attention should be placed, and the policy should be tailored to that specific set of problems, whether it's density, poverty, or concentration of nursing homes. That is where the attention needed to be placed.
Or a combination of the three, yeah.
Shut down everybody.
Yeah. And that's
across the Commonwealth because of a problem in Philadelphia.
And as we take account of all this at the end, it's going to be interesting to see if any accountability gets attached to anybody here in the long run, because I think that there's going to be a lot of accounting after the dust settles on this, whenever that comes. Joel, great stuff this morning, as always. We appreciate it. We're looking forward to talking to you again very, very soon as we continue to see the ripples in the pond and the effect that they're having here on the state of Pennsylvania and right here in our own locale in the York County area. Thanks so much, Joel. Appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you very much, Gary, and welcome back.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Back.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Back.
Thank